What's going on, everybody? Yes, it's me by myself today. I don't know if many of you may remember that the last time I was by myself, I it was the time I went to church, was led to go to church, and I was reflecting upon the sermon that I heard that on that day, and so here I am again to speak about something that has been on repeat for me for the last couple of weeks. And it is another sermon. Um, so a few weeks ago, I was traveling and I had downloaded the sermon by Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts, and it was entitled God Still Cares. And so I called myself listening to it while I was on the plane. Didn't really get a good listen. I heard pieces of it here and there, but I felt like I needed to, revisit and listen to it again. So I did just that. And so I listened to it once, and then I felt like I needed to listen to it again, and I needed to listen to it again. So I think I probably listened to this sermon probably a good 10 times by now in its entirety. That's not including the times I've just, listened to a piece of it here or there or something like that. But this sermon really resonated with me. Being someone who sometimes questions, does God still care? Just a little bit of a backstory. I recently have suffered from the loss of my father. And so it's not even been a full 60 days yet since he's been gone. And it leaves me to ask sometimes, why him? Why now? What is my life to look like without him? And for those who don't know, my father was a big part of my life. I say was, but I can say he still is a big part of my life. Um, one of my biggest supporters, one of my biggest um, confidants. It's like a best friend. All of those things wrapped into a man with such a big heart and such a loving individual. And I feel like I've gotten a lot of his ways, those, both good and bad. However, um, so him passing left me feeling lost in some ways, and just like I said, having some unanswered questions, and then just the one of the main question was, does God care, and why would God do this? um, a little bit more of a backstory. So on my 17th birthday, my grandmother, who was also somebody I was very close to, passed, and I remember praying that God was heal her body, all of the things, and then she ended up passing. And so I've been carrying some of that for years as well, feeling like I've been forgotten about, and that he doesn't care about me, in a sense, not in reality, but in a sense, that's just been my feeling, because some of the things I've prayed for, I don't feel like he's delivered on. And so I don't necessarily fully understand his plan, but I understand that there is a plan, and that's what I'm using to lead, guide, and direct me. So when I heard this sermon, it resonated with me from the beginning, after I, of course, listened to it a second time. And so today I just want to kind of go over some of the things that resonated with me, that hopefully will resonate with you and be a blessing to you as well. And so let's get into it. So, pardon me, I got a few notes. Actually, I got several notes. But one of the things she says in the beginning is, she says, the more I care, the less I care. I can't care about, this is my paraphrasing, I can't care about X, Y, and Z and care about what you think of me at the same time. And I guess that was her explanation of saying, the more I care, the less I care, because you can't care about one thing and then care more about something else. So if you care about whatever the issue may be, you shouldn't really care about what people think of you, or what people think. And I know that's sometimes it's very difficult to do, as it's always difficult for me, to not care about what people think, because I would have to say that I'm a self-proclaimed, for most majority of my life, a self-proclaimed people pleaser. And so that definitely resonated with me. She went on to say, you can't afford to care about what you used to care about any longer. Um, for me, that resonated because I say I used to care about my job identity. And I also care about prioritizing the feelings of others over mine. And that, for me, as I'm going on this journey of I say finding myself or finding my place and my footing in the world. Um, those are big things for me. My job has always been what I identify as, and excuse me, as I'm turning the corner on some things now, I'm realizing that maybe I don't, I can identify outside of where I work or where other things. And so with that being said, I'm able to move a little differently within the four walls of my job and realize that, listen, this is my job, but it doesn't make me, it doesn't break me. And so it allows me to go in each and every day with a different perspective. Um, and I must say a bit more freeing to have that perspective. And then also when I'm looking at the fact of, um, discontinuing putting other people's feelings before mine, that is a big, big, big thing for me. But I have to realize that I am just as important as those whom I am caring about. Um, she talked a lot about capacity. And so before I get into what she said about capacity, let's look at this clip.
Just because you could carry it in the past doesn't mean that you're in a position to carry it now. I see you. And sometimes you got to let people know. Yeah, I see you. Sometimes you got to let people know. I can't carry what I used to carry. Don't let your pride get in the way. Sometimes you need some help letting somebody carry you this time. And until you tell us, we won't know that you don't have the capacity that you once had. I don't know who that is for. It is not in my notes, but I believe that is a word from God. That it is okay for you to not have the same strength that you once had. The problem is if you allow people to continue to believe that you had the strength that you no longer possessed. There are some of you who have carried others for so long that you don't even see the strength that God has placed around you. And I hear God saying that I have placed people in your world who have the capacity to carry some of the things that once were your responsibility.
Now, the capacity aspect hit hard for me, both as a receiver and a giver of the load, so to speak. Um, and I found initially when I listened to it, I thought about how sometimes I emotionally dump on other people and expect them to carry that. And to those I've done that to, my apologies, because now I also can see how it feels to be on the other side of that coin. And it doesn't feel good. And sometimes you don't have the capacity to be able to carry your load and somebody else's load. And you need to be able to speak up and say that. And oftentimes we don't speak up and say, listen, hey, I got my own stuff going on. I can't carry your stuff and fully give attention to my stuff. And it's okay to say that. And it's okay to verbalize those things. It doesn't make you any less of a good person. It just makes you a person that is human. And that whole capacity aspect really, really hit me. She went on to say, no capacity to give attention to what I used to give attention to. The ability to recognize what you pay attention to and what you care about needs to shift. So simple as that. The things that as you grow, the things that you used to care about, you may not care about anymore. And there should be a mind shift and a shift in perspective as you grow, and as you have different priorities in life. People will be expecting you to care about the things you used to care about. People don't seem to like change. When you change and when you're doing something different or something that is better for yourself, somebody is not going to like that because they're used to you being their load carrier. They're used to you being there for them in the capacity that you once was before. And so when you don't do that, it's hard for some to take notice of that. And not so much take notice of it, it's hard for them to understand that. Because you're supposed to always be consistent. You're supposed to always be who you've always been. You're supposed to always be there for me. That becomes the thought process of some. And it's like you're not allowed to grow. And that makes a great deal of sense to me when she said that. Um, she talked about compassion collapse. And as I prefaced this, what she was talking about, compassion collapse, it's about, us living in a world right now where we're not as compassionate about things on a grander level, things that happen on a grander level. We don't have the compassion for as we do for a singular item or a singular event that may take place. She said people begin to feel less empathy the greater the scale of the trauma. When we can put on the individual with a cause, we are more likely to respond from a place of compassion. So essentially what I got from that is, excuse me, on when there's a traumatic experience on a grander level, we have less empathy for that, but we are able to better identify when it's more of a singular um, catastrophe, for lack of better words, that may have taken place. Um, because we can respond from a better place of compassion. We become more compassionate in those situations. The greater the issue, the greater the concern, the more powerless we feel. You know, she went on to talk about things that are going on in the world presently, and so we can't not pay attention to those things, but a lot of times we don't give it the attention that it deserves because we feel like, what can I do? You know, you are able to help one person, yes, of course, but to help some, 1,000 people or 600 people, whatever, like that, it's a little harder to do, and it's a little harder to take on that. So then a lot of times we just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, that's sad, or oh, sorry to hear that. But then you keep on moving on throughout life without giving it a second thought. Don't allow the size of the catastrophe to diminish your compassion, because your compassion leads to action. So again, she went on to further talk about, hey, yeah, these things are happening on a grander scale. Yes, they are. Yet don't let that diminish your compassion. Still be just as compassionate as you would be for something that just happened to one person. Because when you allow that to happen, then guess what? There's no action that takes place. And so then you become helpless or powerless, or you feel like you're powerless. In reality, you're not. So have the same level of compassion for a grander traumatic experience or a greater traumatic experience as you would for a smaller one. Um, all of it deserves your compassion. So don't create a difference in compassion, in your level of compassion, based off the event. Um, and she says, "Can you care without carrying?" And that's my question for you. Can you care without carrying? A lot of times we feel like in order to show that we care about somebody, we have to carry their load. We have to carry what they're going through. We have to carry uh, all of those things. And again, it hit me because sometimes I feel like my expectation is that those close to me do carry some of these things, but in reality, it's not their load to carry, it's my load to carry. And it's my job to figure out how I'm going to um, get through some of these things. And it is, I might say, it is kind of difficult for me to, because I'm one of those people that I don't like to ask for help. I don't know how to receive help. So then in those times when I feel like I am coming to someone for that, whether it be emotional support or whatever it may be, that I feel like I should be getting in those moments, and I don't get that, I will admit that I feel a way, but then I have to go back to the beginning of what I was saying before. Is like, listen, they may not have the capacity to really help me or really be there for me in those times, and so then I get mad. I'm understanding of that now, but in those moments I would get upset or feel away because I'm always, and then I think about, well, I've always been there for them when they've gone through, when they've needed me, when they have needed somebody to help carry the load. I've been there. So why in these moments when I'm needing somebody, they're not there for me? And I have to be understanding to realize that, yeah, they may not have the capacity to do so, and that's okay. Now, granted, it shouldn't be, eh, we'll leave that alone. We'll leave that alone. But so can you care without carrying? Can you care without carrying? That'll be the question I ask you today. And then something has got to shift in the way that I am looking at this situation. Because the way that I'm looking at the situation is causing me to carry it in a way that is detrimental to the way I'm showing up in life. Boom, boom. light bulb went off for me in that when she said that, because you know what? I sometimes, not sometimes, I more than not, I am one that lets situations overtake me and don't allow myself to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so that hit home because the way I'm looking at this situation is causing me to carry it in a way that is detrimental to the way I am showing up in life. I let things overtake me. I let situations become my identity. If it didn't work out, don't then I let that become, just become who I was. It didn't work out. It's not always going to work. It's always going to be this way. It's never going to be anything different. And then I show up in that way. I show up. I am a self-proclaimed cheerleader for everybody else, but not a cheerleader for myself. And so, with that being said, it's time for me to shift my perspective to be a cheerleader for myself, as well as, because it's not to say I can't be a cheerleader for you and a cheerleader for me, but I also need to make sure that I'm cheering for myself just as hard as I'm cheering for you. So when I show up, I am giving myself the same level of attention as I'm giving to someone else. And so, again, I say, when I'm carrying these things and I'm letting it overtake me, it does affect how I present, how I show up in life, because then um, I'm not being who I really could be, who I really should be. One thing I really, really admired about my father is that he was all, no matter what was going on in life, no matter what was on his mind, he showed up happy. He enjoyed life. He was the life of the party. His favorite line was always, "You have to make your own happiness." And I can definitely say that that is one thing that he did in his life. He made his own happiness, and um and didn't let situations become who he is or become his identity. And so I'm still working on that. But again, when I heard it, it resonated for me. It hit home, and I really want that to be a staple in my life. Um, you can't be there for someone else and lose yourself. I think we all know that. You can't. You gotta stay true to who you are, even when you are being a help for others. Don't allow yourself to become spread too thin, trying to be everything to everyone. Again, it doesn't make you a bad person if you don't have the capacity to do so. Hey, you can speak up and say, "Listen, I can't do it. I can't do it." It doesn't make you, I'll let you in on a little secret. So I had an idea of something I wanted to do. I shared it with a couple of my friends, and initially it sounded like they were pretty excited about it, but then they came back and they said, it doesn't, I'm not as passionate about it as you are. I don't have the capacity to do it right now. I have other things on my plate. And initially I took that as rejection. And we'll talk about the rejection a little later, but I took that as rejection. In reality, that wasn't them rejecting my ideas nor rejecting me. It was them just saying, "Listen, I don't have the capacity to be help you with your dream or your thing that you want to do, and as well as, or in the same time, I don't have the capacity to be there for you, as well as fulfill my own dreams and my own um, things that I want to do." And so when I really gave it some thought and thought about it, because I even let one of them know, "Listen, I felt a way initially when you said X, Y, and Z, but I understand now what you meant. It wasn't a rejection. It was just you being honest about what you can handle in this moment." Um, God has enough capacity to handle all things. His compassion doesn't fail even when we do. Wow. And she elaborated. He, went on to say that God can be multiple places at multiple times. He can be, whatever you may need and whatever I may need and whatever my neighbor may need and the person, everybody. He can be those things, and he can take on all those things. And I think sometimes we forget that. I think sometimes I forget that. But it is true. When sometimes I look to man when I should be looking to God for some of the things that I need. So, and then she starts touching on the God still cares. So let's look at this real quick.
Our compassion runs out when somebody did something. We have no problem responding when someone's the victim. But what makes God different from us is he responds even when we're the villain. God still cares. When Adam and Eve were in the garden and they ate from the fruit that he told them not to eat from, and they found themselves naked and tried to cover themselves with fig leaves, if he were like us, he would have said, you got yourself into that and now you got to see yourself out. But God goes and finds an animal and he slaughters the animal and he makes them their own clothes, because I still care about you. Even when you're wrong, I still care about you. Even when you're disobedient, I still care about you. Even when you didn't follow my word, God still cares.
I definitely enjoyed the dramatic effect of how she said it. God still cares. You just didn't rush through it, delivered it so that you could feel it, so that you can get it. And I definitely did. I have to remind myself a lot of times that God still cares. Because when things aren't going the way that I think they should, I oftentimes start to believe that God doesn't care. Again, like I mentioned at the top, my father passing led me, it's like, why him, why this is, I'm already going through so much right now, and then you take him, but why, and so it leads me to feel like, hey, do you really care about me? But in reality, I have to understand, and I have to be honest with myself, because a lot of times I will say, hey, things ain't going right, things ain't this, that, and the third. However, when I really sit and think about it, things could be a lot worse. Boom. But also, I have to really admit and be honest that he's been there for me throughout it all, because there are so many things so many different ways my life could be right now. And I'm saying in a negative way, how my life could be right now. And it's not that. I've been blessed with a great support system. I've been blessed with a great husband. I've been blessed with a great father. I've even been blessed with a great mother. Our relationship is not what it should be or what I would like it to be, but I can take from that the upbringing that she provided for me and all those things. Um, God still cares. Man, it means so much to me to really hear that, and it was so reassuring for her to say that, um, because it's true. It's true. God still cares. And I'm sorry to get on your nerves and to keep repeating it, but I have to keep reminding myself that he does, because even in the times when I feel like he doesn't, he does. He's been taking care of me when I felt like he wasn't. He's been there for me and putting things in place for me to be a better person, to live the life that I envisioned. But it's also to say he's not going to just give everything to me, and I'm going to have to put a little work in. And I think that's been a disconnect for me in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, I just want things, because I look at other people sometimes. It's, oh, look at everything just worked out for them so wonderfully, not seeing the work that had to be put into it. But yeah, so I have to remember that, and I have to keep telling myself that God still cares. Even when I don't think that he does, even when I'm questioning the vision, when I'm questioning the journey, when I'm questioning the purpose, he still cares. And I have to remember that. I would venture to guess, and I'm probably not the only one that sometimes questions if he still cares, but I also encouraged everyone to really look at situations that you've experienced in your life, and where you thought he wasn't there and where you thought he forgot about you. But then how did you get out of those things? And how did you become better? And how did you survive? Because those are all testaments of how God has been there in your life, help guide you through. And sometimes I think we take those things for granted, or we don't really see the fullness of what they are because we're so blinded by our own noise, our own emotional noise, our own mental noise, our own circumstantial noise, and we let all those things become. We let those things tell the story versus really allowing ourselves to appreciate what God has been doing for us in our lives. Um, she also talked about she talked about correction, and how sometimes correction we interpret as being rejection. Um, she said, misinterpretation of correction will mess with your mind. It will have you believing that everyone is out to get you and that you are not good enough. Moments of correction are where your perspective is being shifted, and meaning like God is correcting things for you. And I think I don't have the clip for it, but I can play the little sound bite so that you can hear kind of what some of the reasons why she said that.
What you thought was a come up was actually a setback. And if God would not have rejected it, you would have still been pursuing something that would have brought you down instead of elevated you. You see, that's the kind of word for somebody who almost settled in a relationship that you thought was a come up, only to find out that it would have been a setback because they would have never had enough capacity to take care of what God put on the inside of you. I thought you were a come up, but I thank God that He allowed it to fall apart, because what I know now is that it was actually a setback. I wanted the job, but the job wasn't a come up. It was more money. It was a bigger office, but it was actually going to be a setback because I was going to lose my mind trying to keep up with the job. You called it a come up. God called it a setback, so He corrected it. What you thought was a come up.
So I hope that resonates because I know for me, that's a big, I wanted this high paying job, and I thought I made it. Oh, I got it. It was the worst experience for me. And so I had to realize that the course correction that God has taken me through is not rejection. It's to lead me to where I should be. Now He led me to a place. Well, I don't know if He led me or if I led myself there, but He led me to a job now that it ain't the best. But you know what? I'm able to find the light in this, in where I am now. With some of the connections I'm making with some of my coworkers, and really feel like, I can be myself and I can be a support. So that it made sense to me. Listen, he had to take me away from that, because guess what? I thought I made it. I thought, hey, this is it. I made it, but I didn't. And that's not what was meant for me. And so I have to realize that correction was not rejection. Um, Interesting enough. So it's like, three of us African Americans in my current job. And so we all of us feel like sometimes we're under a lot more scrutiny than we should be, under fire and stuff like that. But one of my coworkers said to me one day, she said, I feel like I'm not supposed to be here. And ordinarily when someone would say something like that to me, I would normally go into that rhetoric of, oh no, you shouldn't think like that. That ain't it. But this time I couldn't do that. And I said something completely different. I said, you know what? You're probably right. You're not supposed to be here. And so everything that's happening here and everything that we're going through here is to make us uncomfortable so that we won't get too comfortable and won't make a move. And when I was telling that to her, I'm speaking to myself, listen, because I've known what it's like to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. You get comfortable there, you feel like, why rock the boat? Yeah, it's bad, but it ain't that bad. But as I was listening, as I was saying these words to her, and I ended up having dialogue about it after the fact, it was kind of like, yes, no, this is meant for us to move. So again, this correction, it ain't rejection. Some of the things that we experience is not we experience a rejection. It's hey, He's course correcting our path so we do things differently, and so we can get to a life that we deserve to live. One of my big things right now, I say, is I want to live a life that makes me happy and makes my Father proud. That is hands down my new mantra for living. Um, she says misinterpreting correction as rejection paralyzes your growth, because if you feel like you're being corrected and taking that as being rejected, then guess what? You won't grow. You're too focused on the fact of I'm being rejected when you're really not. It's just a correct course correction, but you interpret that as being rejection. And so then you don't try anymore. You give up. You become stagnant. And so all those things, a lot of times we take it as a negative when we really should take it as a positive. And that's something, again, it's easier said than done. So I'm not saying these things like, oh my God, the light bulb went off, changed my life, I'm a new person. No, these are things that I've heard, resonated with me, and I'm still working on how I can implement these things into my life so that I can be a better me, so that I can be a better person, and so that I can live the life that makes me happy and makes my father proud. Although he would always tell me that he was proud of me, I just felt like there was other things I could be doing to make him even more proud. And so that's why I say that, but God still cares even when the variables are different. So I leave you with that. God still cares. God still cares. Even when we don't think that he does, he still cares. And if we're honest with ourselves and think back to situations that we have gotten out of and didn't know how we were going to get out of, things that have happened or blessings that we've gotten that we didn't know that we were going to get, and know that in some cases we probably didn't even deserve. But God still cares. God, and let that enlighten you, let that guide you, let that be with you as you go through your days and your weeks and your months. God still cares. And I'll leave you with one last clip, and then we're out of here. And so, again, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for spending a few moments with me today. And I hope this was food for you as it was food for me.
God still cares. He still cares. I know your mother's gone, but he still cares. I know you don't know what's going to happen with the food on your table, but I'm telling you, God still cares. I've been hungry before and I found out that God still cares. I've been sick before and I found out that God still cares. I've been lonely before and found out that God still cares. I've been lost before and found out that God still cares. I come up against suicide right now in the name of Jesus. I come up against loneliness right now in the name of Jesus. I come up against isolation right now in the name of Jesus. God still cares. God still cares. God still cares, and he'll interrupt the message to make sure you know that God still cares.